Hey everybody, good morning. My name is Matt DiCarlo. I'm an assistant professor of social work at Stockton University. This presentation is called Course Design with Cost in Mind. The purpose of this presentation is to go over some of the issues with the cost of textbooks and other educational resources and how faculty members, when they're going through the normal course design, course redesign process, can consider those costs and try and meet with students where they are. So just a little bit about me. I have a couple of open textbooks, so those are free to access. Anybody can create their own versions of them, mix them together, create derivative resources because of the open license attached to them. And I run a project called Open Social Work that focuses on spreading open education, open access, and open science inside of my discipline, which is social work. So the purpose of this presentation, again, is to go over why textbook costs are an issue, bringing up some of the equity issues and how they can become a barrier to learning, and then how professors can address some of those things through things like cost-cutting strategies and redesigning their classes to use free or openly licensed resources. So this graph is something that faculty members and students know very well. College textbooks have been going up in price for quite a long time. Although that price increase has leveled off, it is still a quite high inflation from where it was just in the 1980s. And we know that this is not sustainable. We can't just keep expecting students to pay more and more money for textbooks every single year. The business model of putting out a new edition with very few changes every 2 years is not sustainable. And what we know from the research on open education, on college access, on real college students, is that these costs are not equitable. So when I asked my students about textbook costs, and I did a study at my previous university, we also sent out the survey to 5 other schools inside of the area, we got a lot of great qualitative feedback, a lot of good quantitative feedback. And I think that this quote really points out just, one, how expensive textbooks can be within a given semester. 2, that they compete with other short-term financial issues like rent, groceries, gas money, medical expenses, just things that you need to cover out of pocket. Whereas financial aid is usually dedicated towards debt and long-term issues, that textbook costs are really short-term financial issues that are all due at the beginning of the semester. And for most students, they don't necessarily know which professor is going to use the textbook, which one is not going to use the textbook, and whether it is really worth the price to get it. The textbook market is pretty broken. About $3 billion in financial aid every single year goes directly from student accounts to commercial publishers. That as a result of these high textbook costs, students are taking on more employment, they're skipping meals, they take on more loans, and they take fewer classes. So this is affecting students' physical health, it's affecting their persistence inside of school, and it's affecting their long-term financial health as well. And this is something that faculty members know. In a survey of hundreds of faculty from across the United States, most people and most chairpersons and faculty members agreed or strongly agreed that the cost of course materials within their discipline is a serious problem. And when faculty members try and make suggestions about the textbooks that they use inside of their department, by far the most popular suggestion is make them less expensive. But faculty members also have really complex notions of what is too costly and where that sort of balance between the cost of the textbooks and its pedagogical usefulness sort of shakes out. And so faculty members in general were split between satisfied and unsatisfied with the cost of textbooks in their classes. And overall, faculty were either extremely or moderately satisfied with the textbooks in their class. So there are good reasons for that. Faculty members have used textbooks for a long time, that they have designed their course around those things. But what happens when faculty members completely eliminate textbook costs, when they either adopt open textbooks that are free to use or no textbook at all? The impact on grades is negligible. That students in courses that use an open textbook versus a commercial textbook are they do about equivalently. What we do see is improvements in drop, failure, and withdrawal rates, and that the impact on part-time, non-white, and Pell eligible students is particularly impactful. So when you eliminate textbook costs, you are not necessarily making everybody read. However, you are eliminating for historically underserved groups the cost barrier towards learning. And that for these students, when they're comparing a commercial textbook in one class and an open textbook in another class, quality is about the same. There are always students who say it is not as good, but that tends to be under about 10% in most studies. And it's also important to note that New Jersey mandates that public universities develop an open textbook plan for this reason, in order to promote equity inside of those spaces and to make sure that they are meeting students where they are. So what does this mean for faculty? It means course redesign and reducing costs. But there may not be openly licensed or free resources that cover the topic that you study. So I am in a graduate social work program. There's not going to be a lot of OER or open textbooks on, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy or motivational interviewing. I might need a textbook or something commercial in order to actually teach that stuff inside of my class. If that's what I'm doing, then here are some strategies that you can use in order to meet students where they are with regard to their ability to pay out of pocket. First, post PDFs of the first 2 weeks of readings, maybe even 3 weeks of readings. You can ask the publisher for these. I think it's important to recognize that students may not be able to afford it on the first day of class and provide them some flexibility in getting another paycheck behind them, or especially for veterans, getting that student loan refund check so they can actually go out and purchase those materials, because that often doesn't come in until after classes have already started. You can also look at requiring the older editions of textbooks or listing the differences between the older and newer editions in order to make that textbook more affordable for students. I would also suggest ignoring piracy. So just like students used to copy each other's books at a copy machine, today, most often they are likely going to be taking pictures on their cell phone and reading it that way. Other things you can do include setting up a textbook lending program. So your department might purchase textbooks for an entire cohort of students and use those moving forward. Other things you can do, your department might be able to negotiate directly with the publisher, or that you as a professor can do so, especially if you have one of those classes that is pretty high enrollment. But let's say you want to go one step further. Say you don't want to use that textbook anymore and you have some extra time, because it is a very time-intensive process to redesign your class. You want to eliminate textbook costs overall. Odds are you have your own resources already that either from other professors, things you developed over time, you know what you have already to prepare and teach your class. Those might be videos, activities, case studies, slideshows, whatever it is that you use. You can use that plus whatever free internet resources like podcasts and videos that you find, as well as open educational resources, plus whatever you find inside of the library, whether those are journal articles, videos, book chapters. So you can combine all of those together. And then this way, on the first day of class, students already have access to everything that they will need in order to be successful inside of those classes. Other things you can do are adopting open textbooks. So rather than sort of piecing stuff together, open textbooks are free, openly accessible to anybody with an internet connection. Textbooks that look exactly like commercial textbooks, but they are free to access and use. The best place to go is the Open Textbook Library out of the University of Minnesota and the Open Education Network. There you will find open peer reviews, so signed peer reviews by other faculty members on over 800 textbooks. BC Campus Library, I would also throw out is a fantastical database that has fewer textbooks, but they do a little bit better job of noting where the books have been scanned for accessibility for people with disabilities, as well as whether they come with ancillary materials, so like slideshows, quizzes, and other things that professors often rely on from commercial publishers, at least as a place to get started with preparing for their classes. If you decide to go the open textbook route, please know that you are interrupting the normal pattern that students use in order to purchase the required materials for their class. And that pattern is, I want to go to the bookstore. For us at Stockton, that is going to the Follett bookstore, seeing what is required for my class, and then going on Amazon or Chegg or somewhere else and buying that stuff as cheaply as possible. And that is, for most students, what they do. It's important to know for them that they don't have to do that. that you can buy oftentimes an open textbook that's been printed for you, but you could also print one yourself or simply use the digital edition, which is free. It's important to put those links to those digital editions, so the HTML edition, your mobile, your PDF edition, EPUBs, other tablet readers. So those links should go everywhere. They should go inside of the LMS. You should email them. They should be inside of your syllabus. And on the first day of class, it's really important that you go over how to access them so that students build those access pathways early, so they don't have to keep downloading the same PDF over and over again. They know that they can download a PDF and then take notes within it, and how to take notes on a website. They may not have ever done that before. And also going over the right to print and copy, and just sort of make right to print and copy themselves, or to copy and paste text because of the open license that it's attached to it. And finally, when you adopt this open textbook and you put that adoption into the bookstore, it's a good idea to reach out to the bookstore to make sure that when it appears to students, that they don't think that they have to purchase that print edition. So if you adopt an open textbook and you adopt it within the bookstore, you want to make sure that you put in some text towards students so that they say that, so that students know they don't have to buy the print edition, that you're going to give them the digital edition for free, and they should only buy the print edition if they prefer print, which many students do. In addition to open textbooks, there are smaller open educational resources, so things like videos and case studies and activities and syllabi, and those are all fantastic resources to use. You might use these two databases. They're very commonly used across disciplines, Oer Commons and Merlot. Oer Commons has a review system that's a little bit more focused on communities and groups. Merlot's uses more of a traditional editorial process. But again, the reviews maybe aren't necessarily as extensive as they are inside of the open textbook library, and definitely lower than you would see inside of the peer review process inside of a journal. But they are excellent places to share and discover resources. Of course, none of this work in redesigning your classes, making them more accessible to students, actually means that they will engage with the materials. Just because the textbook is free doesn't mean that students are going to read it. However, it does eliminate those bad reasons, the reasons that you would care about from a social justice perspective, that inhibit students from being successful inside of those classes, so that that $200 textbook becomes a free textbook, so that that $200 access code that includes a homework package becomes something that is openly licensed and something that is accessible to students on the first day of class, because it meets students in the very financially precarious position where they already are. So where can you go at Stockton for more information about open textbooks and open educational resources? The Open Textbook and Educational Resource Committee is chaired by Christy Goodnight and Kathy Klein. That is a fantastic place to go. As well as the Center for Teaching and Learning Design. They would be happy to help you with adopting open educational resources, with creating and sharing some of your own, and how to bring them all together inside of an open textbook or an OER course. Thank you very much for your attention today. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to me at Stockton. Thank you very much for your time.